Okay, we are live February the 1st, 2024. We're going to kind of build on top of a lot of the stuff we were talking about yesterday. And there have been some developments with regard to Taylor Swift. I had mentioned that they're mad at her. The right wing, the MAGA ban, are mad at her because she's not in a burqa. No, wait, they're not there yet. Almost. They're mad at her, though, because she's not married. They're mad at her because she's going for Biden, and they're mad at her because of her influence. We've been talking about this, but it's escalated beyond just being mad, and we'll go into some of the responses. But another area where this has developed is back in like 2015, 2016, she was very popular on 4chan. A lot of the frog people, Pepe the Frog, and these 4chan meme types they called her Princess Tay-Tay. They saw Taylor Swift as the embodiment of Aryan perfection. She was their goddess. They worshipped her, and I thought it was strange at the time. And they gradually had to let her go. Now they see her as basically a race traitor, which puts her in danger. As you'll see, some of the more unhinged of the MAGA ban are basically saying off with her head. It's escalating quickly. Let's go ahead and just start with this first one. I found this one last night right after our live stream. I was like, wow, these individuals are not only all saying the same thing, but they're really on brand here with what I said, MAGA ban. And it also goes in line with like the Turner Diaries, the idea that those who counter the revolution are worse than the enemy. Okay, so here we go. This is an individual on Twitter. It's a live stream called The Dilly Show. And let me give you the full context, but basically, he's talking about, first one, he's the one who said that there's a green light to gun down protesters. In 2020, he'd made some violent threats before, but now he's saying this. He says, the second she makes the wrong choice and endorses Biden, it is incumbent upon us to punish that B. So that B needs to be punished. And I assume he means that the MAGA ban need to bury her up to her waist in the sand and throw rocks at her.
As long as Taylor Swift remains, we'll call it a free agent, we will behave a certain way. The second she makes the wrong choice, it is absolutely incumbent upon us to punish that bitch for doing that.
So there you have it. If she endorses Biden, she's going to be stoned by the MAGA ban. And there's more. I mean, I followed this guy a little bit just to see. If you ask me, he's a very polished Fed, one of these, Ray Epps types, an agent provocateur, a baked Alaska, a Jake and Jelly. And look, don't let QAnon Shaman, Jake and Jelly, don't let any of them distract you from the fact that they are, in fact, Feds and shills, that there are no real January 6 POWs. They're all actors. The whole thing is a big sham. They have some of the actors calling the other Feds, well, they're all, actors and Feds. It's almost interchangeable, but there's nobody there who is innocent or isn't controlled. It was a big puppet show. It was a big theatrical production. And everyone was following the same well-rehearsed script. So anyway, Taylor Swift has also been recently reappropriated by the right, who again, they saw her as a traitor. And just to give you a little background on it, Nazis and members of the alt-right consider Taylor Swift to be an Aryan pop queen who can red pill America into a race war through her pop hits. And that's from 2016. So this goes back a ways. And you can see how she has upset their expectations. She's no longer on their side. New York Post reports Taylor Swift effect, sparking wild conspiracy theories on presidential race. Even Vivek Ramaswamy had said something to the effect of her role in this thing is pivotal in getting the youth to just accept Joe Biden in mass. And this seems really overblown, and it seems like it's exaggerated hyperbole as usual, and it is. It is for sure. But look at some of these headlines here. Pentagon denies Taylor Swift as an asset for government psyops. There's an undue amount of attention being focused here. But now look at Trump's response. Donald Trump's inner circle vows to wage, quote, holy war on T. Swift. Thinks he's more popular. So, holy war, jihad, MAGA, you can see it's all leading somewhere. And then I saw this, Jack Posobiec, who's behind this effort to reappropriate her for White Pride Month, has compared her to the woman in red from The Matrix. Another interesting connection here. All right, let's see what we're joined. We're joined here by an entire raft full Portal Complex Into the Beyond. Frank Merge, Gematria 101. Osher Oswaldo, G33, says there's nothing to listen to tonight. Thanks, bro. Yeah, and, we're trying to do this every night. And even mornings. I'm actually trying to expand the schedule here. 737's here. Lord Laney, Ready or Not 31, says let's break it down. Yeah, look, last night we talked about the Taylor Swift 13 code. That's huge. And it goes back her entire life. And the connections between Taylor Swift and Princess Diana are interesting. Again, it was the right wing who called her a princess for the longest time. And the fact that she's been compared to Princess Diana is notable considering what's building up here. Joined here by Ears Up, Michael Kastner. Hopefully there's no buffering. Mazel has made it. Thank you very much for joining. Again, we are live most nights 9 to 11 p.m. Mountain Time. Phones are generally open. I'm going to try to make it so that they're open the second half. And the reason why is we get a lot of calls that are really interesting and I don't want to censor them. But these are calls that are censorable. And so I want to put them on the second half so I can chop them off. For example, about a month ago we had a caller who was calling for a French Revolution, chopping the heads off of feds, blood down the streets, total revenge for 9/11, etc. Nothing I would ever stand by and endorse. And I said, look, I'm an inactivist. I don't believe we should organize a bunch of misinformed conspiracy theorists into some kind of hysterical riot. And they were like, I disagree with you. Anyway, fast forward, just a few days ago, we had one of these MAGA band types chop the head off of a federal agent and put it on YouTube. And he said, it's time to kill the feds. It's time to kill the media. And I'm like, I'm glad I didn't just passively, tacitly endorse a call to arms. Because that's where the red pillars are at, and we are not with them. I want to make that clear. As far as our position, from a skeptical position, we have no rational basis to take sides with either half of the bifurcated Psywar. And it's always been that way. It's split in two. And I call it bifurcated because each side is necessary for it to work. And it wouldn't work if they all agreed on one issue. It's designed to be split down the middle. They don't want everyone vaxxed. They want half of them to be vaxxed, and they want the other half to be against that half. It's pretty obvious how this thing works. Well, obvious to those who have stepped outside of it, but many are still playing the game. And so if you're playing the game and you want to murder Democrats, you can't sit with us. And there's no reason why you would want to anyway, that's another question in itself. If you're a militant radical who wants to murder your political opponents, why are you going to hang out with inactivist peaceniks? Which is what we embrace. Peace of mind. I have inner peace. I don't have the inner war of the programmed. Okay, continuing. Cheesy Cool, yes, we are live. The unmediated mind says nothing to listen to is right. It's an information desert. Or an information abandoned desert town where it appears there's life from the outside, but look closer and it's hollowed. Yeah, definitely. I call it the desert of the designated real because it's all fake. But if they say it's real, you have to agree it's real. And it's all contrived, a curated false Truman Show paradigm. And if you're not with it, nothing caters to that. This is all bread and circuses. Like, what if you're done with bread and circuses? Like, I'm very interested in it from like an anthropological point of view. I mean, to me, this is anthropology, it's philosophy, it's a lot of things, but I'm not really, I'm not really in their circus. Their circus does not exist in my head. There's nothing you can put on the screen that's going to trigger me to go attack a neighbor or run for the hills or embrace some new phobia. And all day long, we're analyzing various phobias. In fact, xenophobia is very hot right now. I had a lot of callers saying, don't you know, there are military age males coming over the border. I'm like, you guys are the same ones whining about the lack of strong men, the lack of masculine archetypes with traditional values. You're the ones who are complaining about genocide and depopulation. And here you have tens of millions of traditional value cis hetero males coming in through the borders, and you want to stop that. None of this makes sense. Like, you would actually want that to be the replacement population. If anything, you should want open borders to the Taliban. Just merge the Taliban with the MAGA ban and call Middle America MAGAstan. Problem solved. Because that is where they're going. We were just listening to Elijah Schaefer. He was one of those guys at Kenosha live stream. I guess he worked for Tucker Carlson. He was live streaming the Kenosha riots. Elijah Schaefer, and he said women shouldn't be allowed to vote. Like, you see how far they're going. They want to lower the age of consent, no more voting, no abortion. It's pretty obvious where they're headed. We call him Elijah because he had that coke jaw thing going for him in 2020. I mean, not a lot of time to sleep. I can understand you're live streaming these staged, orchestrated riots all day. 737 said, I watched the IPS Jordan Maxwell interview. You know, I wish we could have done some follow-ups. I should have reached out to him more. I just found out Michael Aquino committed suicide, which is distressing at any age. I know he's older, but if you don't know, Michael Aquino wrote Mind War, which explains the world as it is right now. In fact, I'm going to have to reread that and do a review, so let me put that in my notes. I mean, in a way, it's posited as like a hypothetical. Like, if we wanted to get rid of the physical destruction of the world, we could just use the psychological warfare, culture war, mind war, and subjugate the populations this way. You know, subliminate the warfare, put it into like basically psyop theater. And I'm like, yeah, that's what they've done. They're writing about it as a hypothetical, but that's actually the world we live in. Nicholas Pitt says, I just watched Jaren on Alex Stein. Oh, Jaren's the guy that fakes ISS transits for NASA while pretending to be a flat earther. Very interesting character there. Alex Stein, never going to go away. Probably going to be president, if not the next Alex Jones. So he's not going away. Not that he should. I mean, in some ways, he's like he's just another Andy Kaufman. If you're into that kind of lowbrow, right wing, I guess like Steven Crowder type of stuff. And Steven Crowder used to be that person until he got married, had kids, and had to kind of play up his, I guess this new archetype they've built up, this building the family, going off into your own land, dominating your wife, etc., not buying her a car even though you have multi-million dollars. I mean, but anyway, he stopped being funny. And when Steven Crowder ceased being funny, if he ever was, maybe he just became less shameless. They brought on Stein. And Stein comes from the world of reality TV. And if you can do reality TV, you can do politics. I mean, what's the difference? And he was on the show Cheaters. And Cheaters was a show where they staged couples having affairs. And then they would bust these couples. It was all staged, all fake. He admitted it, but he told us that he couldn't admit this because it would violate his NDA. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Joe Fiore says, what kind of eyebrows did Michael Aquino's have? Yeah, he and his wife kind of looked like the Munsters or something. They kind of played that up. But, yeah, the Temple of Set has the rank of MAGA, I think, at the 5th level. I don't know if Trump made it up in the Temple of Set, but MAGA is definitely the highest ranking Satanist in that kind of Egyptian mystery school influenced version of Satanism. They went a little more hardcore. Now, the Church of Satan wasn't literal enough for them. They wanted to actually worship some kind of serpent god, and they found one. All right, let's see what else here. Okay, so again, Taylor Swift is the woman in red from The Matrix. They're mad at her. They've been calling out the need to make her pay. She's going to be punished if she doesn't comply and endorse Trump. So we'll see what happens here. Oh, let me point this out too. I mentioned Jake and Jelly. We're talking about, at the time, the 33-year-old. Again, quarantine the 33-year-olds if you want world peace. He's the guy who had the spear and he ran into the state capitol. He downplays it like he was trying to stop the riots. I mean, this guy is just so hard to listen to. But Jake and Jelly is a, quote, shamanic practitioner, which makes a lot of sense. You got white power tattoos, but then you're wearing a Native American style headdress. He leads the crowd in a yell before a march in solidarity with climate activism across the country. So he's basically Greta. He's doing Greta Thunberg level activism here in 2019. This is Jake and Jelly, the Q shaman. Anyway, just another unbelievable character. And I often talk about how satellites are fake, or they're not orbiting satellites, and that you cannot even find a picture of an orbiting satellite. There's no photos of them. If you find a picture of one, it's likely on the ground, attached to a balloon because it has fallen or something. But anyway, I have a picture of a satellite here. Someone posted this on Twitter. And yeah, it definitely looks like an underwater cable. Make of that what you will. To me, it's Occam's razor. What's more likely? Some kind of stable underwater cable, or are you getting information from some orbiting box going 17K, circling the globe? I mean, it's a cool idea, but it's all science fiction. And I've been getting some debate on this on Twitter. People are like, there's no way you could replace orbiting satellites with balloons. It wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to get a stable internet connection. And I'm like, this is interesting because I was looking into Loon LLC, and they were providing internet access to rural and remote areas using high altitude balloons in the stratosphere, 11 miles up. Project Loon. Look it up. I've actually seen one of these in the summer of, I guess it was 2018. But the reason why they stopped using it isn't that it wasn't effective. It wasn't cost effective. It totally works. They have a lot of these things up there, like on a conveyor belt. It's like there's never a lull in your internet activity. They work just fine, but they closed the project because despite their technical achievements and the fact that it's technically viable, it's not commercially viable. So they cut it off, or so they say. In my opinion, in all likelihood, they said, you know what? Let's not give away the game right now. Let's just pretend that Starlink is real, and we'll just pretend like these are orbiting things, and then people will still believe in outer space and all that BS. So in other words, Project Loon provides all the evidence that you need that everything they say that is being done with orbiting satellites could be done with balloons. And it makes a lot more sense, I think, practically speaking. Okay, let's see what we have here. Tyrone McCloskey says, Satanists are required to off themselves. That's how you get to hell. I've never heard that. Interesting theory. I was kind of discussing something yesterday. I came across something in a book by Peter Carroll from the Illuminati of Thantaros. They're not really Satanists. They're more like, they call themselves chaos magicians. And they have this thing they call the red right, where they claim that a person can send their consciousness into a developing fetus in the process of a ritual suicide. Very dark stuff, horror movie type of stuff. And is it true? Serial reincarnation by taking possession of, yeah, it sounds like the Moonchild thing. Jack Parsons, Marjorie Cameron. Sounds like the stuff that they're into, at a minimum. Dua Simpera says, I can vouch for Starlink providing reliable internet service, Satelloons or not. Yeah, that's the question. That is the question there. And some people will say, well, I got it, and on the box it says it's coming from outer space, so I believe it. But I'm thinking the Google Loon thing alone, I think, provides sufficient doubt as to whether the orbiting satellite is the only way to make it work. Plus, we all know for a fact that Elon Musk is a massive liar. I mean, he's really the most popular liar in the world. He lies about space travel. He lies. He lies along with NASA. I mean, that's what they do. They're part of the lie world order. I know they're popular, but let's not pretend like he's just deceived or he's being tricked. In fact, that'd be insulting to him as a person to think that he's that dumb that he could be that insulated and duped. No, he is clearly a world-class liar. So there's no reason to think that his Starlink are anything other than just as fake as everything else he has ever done, including the Tesla in space. Like if you believe in space cars playing David Bowie tracks on an infinite loop, fine. Believe what you want to believe, but you can only say that. I believe because I want to believe, which is a far cry from saying I know. And we make that distinction here. I think it's important to remain knowers so we don't remain, in the morass of the believers and their interchangeable belief systems that they're always fighting over. Like whatever happened to objective reality? Oh, that's right, they nuked it. Nukes are fake, but the introduction of the fake nuke into our formerly objective reality annihilated it as such. And now we live in a subjective, reality fluid, alternate reality game. And it's fun, or stressful, depending on how immersed in it you are. Okay, let's see what else we have going on here. Portal Complex says James Hatfield is an agent. Oh, he's the astronaut, the actornaut, who pretends to be a musician. And he did that. He's the one who actually recorded the first music video in space. It was that David Bowie song. No, I think he's really playing guitar. I shouldn't knock it. I just think that he was holding these concerts in Canada and he was playing his music. And it's like nobody would listen to you play your music if you weren't faking space travel. And the fact that he's faking space travel and he uses that to, for self, I guess, just to give himself some cred like that and to get an audience, I don't know. Just seems a little thirsty, attention starved. But he played the song Space Oddity, ground control to Major Tom, which incidentally, I happen to believe, is foreshadowing for Tom Cruise going to space. And I don't think he ever comes back down. Spoiler alert. G33 says, for real, most internet connection is undersea fiber optics connections, as far as I know. Saw the transatlantic cable on the Appalachian Trail. Yeah, look, that's pretty much it. There's so many misconceptions. And what we're doing here is we are dispelling misconceptions. Okay, Portal says, remember the microphone going through his neck. Yeah, the space station is a 23-hour blooper reel. I'm sorry, 23-year long blooper reel. It's been going on that long, 23 years. 24? And if you look back, look back in time at the space station. The special effects have evolved, but not so much that would be obvious. The recent movie ISS deliberately dumbed down their special effects to not outdo the quote real ISS. But if you look back, 2005, 2010, you can see various iterations of Final Cut Pro and Chroma Key. You can see these things being introduced. When they introduced augmented virtual reality objects, you could see the astronauts awkwardly learning how to interact with things that aren't really there. We've seen examples after so many of these things. Like an astronaut's showing you how they use their, or cosmonaut was showing you how they use their restroom, and he drops a screw and hits the floor loudly. It's like, wait a minute, how did that happen? And the gloobers are all like, oh, it's microgravity. Oh, really? You're in the space station, 17K going super fast around the world, and sometimes you can drop things and they fall. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Okay, continuing. Let's see if we can get through the notes. So, yes, satellites are underwater, or they're balloons. FBI Director Chris Wray warns Congress that Chinese hackers targeting U.S. infrastructure as U.S. disrupts foreign botnet. Volt Typhoon. Now, this is basically saying that Chinese government backed hackers are going to shut down our electrical grids and our water treatment plants. Leave the world behind, right? This is exactly out of Leave the World Behind. And speaking of which, the intro to Leave the World Behind, because we analyzed that movie frame by frame and extrapolated pretty much everything we could, but someone else had gone through it, and the soundtrack in particular. And it turns out the soundtrack adds another layer of subtext to the entire movie. So I'm looking at a scene from a music video in Leave the World Behind, and that's why I titled the live stream. Let me see, the full title is Taylor Swift Nazi Icon, Arkstorm, and Obama's Revenge. So let's get to the Obama's Revenge part. So Barack Obama and Michelle Obama they have this thing called Higher Ground Productions, and they produced Leave the World Behind, which to me is some kind of revenge fantasy against America. A reckoning for slavery, 1619 Project, it's all tied in there. Well, here's a video called The Revenge by Joey Badass. And I happen to think that this video is basically, and this is the video that's the song is playing when the movie begins. But it has the character Joey Badass actually starting a blackout. I'll go ahead and cut to the scene. They have all these rants about being in the Illuminati, a bunch of people in robes, they're in a church. I'll play about a few seconds. He says something about making it to the top, no one can stop me, and then he's going to shut off the power. Demons all around me. Great lyrics. Okay, here we go. He presses a button on a remote. Looks at the power lines. And they all blow up. I just came back for the win. And then, of course, the city goes dark. I just came back for the win. Again, I think this is an Obama message because this is encoded into the movie Leave the World Behind, which is about a blackout, among other things. But it's the opening track. The director of the music video, and this was posted by Frank Murr, has some other works including the 1619 Project. And if you remember, the movie Leave the World Behind begins with a boat called the White Lion crashing into a beach, a reference to the first slave ship, which landed in 1619, and 1619 was the only station they could pick up, and that's the one where the emergency broadcasts were coming. So again, that's Obama's Revenge. And then this is something too, Arkstorm. I hadn't heard of this yet. We've been talking a lot about Disease X. In fact, I just got over it. My computer had it. I had it. Disease X is a hypothetical disease that could wipe out everything. It's the thing we have to watch out for pandemic-wise. But there's this Disease X for climate change, and they call it the Arkstorm. And, we often talk about how Noah's Ark is an old myth that's been brought back with Noah's Ark, referencing the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. NASA's NOAA and their flood myth is just a reiteration of the old flood myth. Well, they have this hypothetical storm called the Arkstorm, an extreme storm of such devastation that it affects a quarter of California's homes. It goes on to describe this type of event that we haven't seen since 1862. But the Arkstorm. I love their appropriation of biblical imagery. And the reason why is that the modern day atheists who worship Gaia and believe in this progressive utopianism, they are still following the Old Testament paradigm, but it's just costumed a little bit differently. It's the same cult. It's the same brainwashing paradigm. The skyphobia is definitely the angry sky god is a huge part of it. Okay, let's go through your comments. Into the Break says Gloob matters. Yeah, well, Gloober is a portmanteau of Glober and Goober, because it's really a difficult position to substantiate right now. Okay, let's see. I mean, look, Matt Walsh, and if you don't know who he is, congratulations. Good for you. And don't look him up. No need. Matt Walsh is getting a lot of flack for basically being a NASA dupe. I mean, he's not like Joe Rogan, who knows better, who knows that they're lying to the public. No, this guy actually sees this as like a national accomplishment, and it hurts his feelings that we're saying America didn't beat the Russians. And his incredulity is really just a result of the fact that he exists in a Truman Show, which is not an enviable place. I mean, to be a low level dupe on the pyramid of lies, I can't think of anything worse. Okay, continuing. Commenter mentions Taylor Swift bank identifier codes. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that this Taylor Swift thing might be a code for some oncoming financial disruption slash blackout, which could be. Portal says you've been trolling Twitter with Disease X before it was a thing. Yeah, and I've done that for a reason because my contention is that the real Disease X that they're going to shut everything down for is not going to be a virus, it's not going to be a computer virus. It's going to be a thought crime or a body of thought crimes that they deem too dangerous for public circulation. That we have to get this out of the consensus circulation. You know, like this idea that cyberspace is equivalent to our a commons at this point. Like, you know, I made this correlation too with Musk. Who's the leading promulgator of space junk? The richest man in the world, Elon Musk, which makes him a threat because, you know, if one calamity up there, they call it the Kessler syndrome. One satellite hits another, it's like an avalanche. We can't leave, we're landlocked. So you can't let the richest guy on earth with all his privilege and his recklessness just throw a bunch of CubeSats up there. But he's throwing 42,000 CubeSats up there. Similarly, he purchases Twitter, and now he's the leading purveyor of mind junk. And every hate crime that has taken place since he appropriated Twitter can be directly attributed to his influences, to the Twitter bubble, to his releasing of the Kraken by allowing so many accounts back on. You know, we can look at this, and I'm saying that this is by design. He's a fall guy. He's a fall guy on a number of levels. And he's here to take down the free flow of information while pretending to be standing up for free speech. But you can't be a free speech advocate when you're part of a totalitarian mind control operation. And given his prominence within the space papacy, it's undeniable that he's actually part of that aspect of it. He's not a freedom fighter in any sense. And not to mention, he's already kowtowed before the green cult. And if you're green at any level, you're already submitting to Osiris, to Saturn, or whatever earth god they worship, Gaia. He's one of them. All right, let's see what else we have here. All right, moving on. I want to give you an example of MSM Plus. Mainstream media offers a worldview most people accept. It's on the screen, happened as such, that's what's going in the history books. The conspiracy theorists have traditionally, and this is just truth or orthodoxy, they say the screen is not telling us everything. Let's add on some more layers. And they add on more layers. The result is a more colorful story that nobody believes in, and there's no more evidence for it. But it's an alternative belief system for those who aren't satisfied with the mainstream one. And this is the controlled dialectic. Mainstream and mainstream plus. Mainstream plus is a subset of mainstream. They just build on it. And until we emerged with MSM minus, the subtractive view, the skeptical view, there wasn't a platform for people who didn't fall into these two categories. Here's an example of MSM plus. Jim Fetzer wrote, Joel Olson and I review the history of nukes and their use on 9/11 to take out the Twin Towers, which was done in a fashion that was different than Building 7. This is a must read. So in this version, this MSM plus version of 9/11, the towers did fall, but they were nuked. But only the Twin Towers. The Pentagon probably wasn't nuked. Building 7 wasn't nuked. But we have to read this. It's a must read for everyone who's interested in 9/11. Now, I can just categorically say the mainstream one was demonstrated to be a movie. So this is fantasy. This is nightmare. This is, in other words, the dream world version gets additional layers of horror. So no, it's not just buildings falling. Now there are nukes used downtown. I mean, again, layers, adding layers, making it appear like you're digging deeper when actually, no, you're plunging yourself deeper into the fictional universe. Whereas we have extracted ourselves from it. And look, I don't have any kind of beef with anyone or contention with anybody who adheres to the MSM Plus any more than I do the MSM types. I understand where they're coming from, but it's important to point out the big influencers and how they arrive at their conclusions for the purposes of reverse engineering them. Michael Letts posted this. They shut off the power at Super Bowl 47 for 33 minutes. That was 11 years and 9 days prior to our next Super Bowl. In other words, Super Bowl 58, which happens on 2/11, will be 9 years and 11 days after the Blackout Bowl. The Blackout Bowl we talk about often. Number 47, I think, correlates to the present day election, fighting for who's going to be number 47. Very interesting correlation there. I mean, this is another level. You know, we find symbolism, we find numbers, gematria, things that seem to connect these different events, but numbers of days between events consistently yields results like this. There's something to this. You know, I mean, there's a lot of reason I think to be looking at this Super Bowl very closely. And I'm not a doomsayer. I'm a fake sayer. Like they're going to do something, and it's going to be fake. They're not going to psyop us like Alex Jones. They're going to do a big false flag. No, they're going to do a big hoax. And Taylor Swift seems to be weirdly like in the center of this entire thing. In fact, here's another post from Jack Posobiec a little while ago. Breaking announcements. I have come up with a solution that will bring everyone together and end the controversy. I'm happy to announce I'm declaring the mascot of White History Month Taylor Swift. Now, again, Jack Posobiec, very close to Trump, human events, high-level propagandist on the far right, single-handedly responsible for Pizzagate, this new satanic panic. Again, the traditional right, he calls himself trad right. The traditional right is all about moral panic, satanic panic, which is the opposite, or rather the other side of what the left does, which is the pandemic and being afraid of the misinformation. So, in other words, there's like these parallel fear-based outlooks, fearing the other side, and the traditional version of sin is really pushed heavily by Jack Posobiec, who has even done exorcisms. All right, let's see what else we have here. Joined by IFEP73. Thanks for joining. All right, now I'm keeping an eye on this thing because there seems to be this hostility directed towards this Taylor Swift, and I don't think it's warranted. And not only is it not warranted, but it's like it's an easy setup for something, and that's why we're watching this thing with such scrutiny here. There's something that's being built up. Also, want to point out that we had this story someone mentioned yesterday, and I have looked into it. The three frozen KC fans. So you get these three Kansas City Chief fans who were found frozen in their backyard. They were hanging out with a friend. I think might have been a rental, like an Airbnb, but whatever it is, they're hanging out with a friend watching the Kansas City Chiefs. They call their friend the chemist. They all take some kind of drug. Here's a toxicology report from News Nation. And these three Kansas City Chiefs fans freeze to death in the backyard. But I think there's more to the story.
Of anesthesiology at California Pacific Medical Center. Dr. Swisher, thanks so much for joining us. So we're still awaiting what the results of these toxicology reports are. We heard possibly cocaine. There's a lot of people who've been focusing on the possibility of fentanyl because these three appear to have just walked outside. One was found sitting in a lawn chair. How quickly would a fentanyl overdose happen in a person?
Well, fentanyl is one of those medications which gets a lot of news because, unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation about fentanyl and how it's used and how it's ingested.
Now, again, this is about men found dead outside Kansas City home. It seems hoaxy. He even brings up Matthew Perry in this and the use of ketamine and drowning in the pool. And the Matthew Perry thing is really strongly connected with Leave the World Behind. So there may be something more to this thing, but the three individuals freezing to death outside might mean something like, for example, well, nuclear winter could be. Winter is coming has been one of these lines from Game of Thrones that has been used to foreshadow this incoming nuclear winter. And we were thinking back on this. The Game of Thrones ends when Westeros burns, which I think is symbolic of the West burning. And it burns as the dragons are torching it. So the dragons are burning Westeros as winter falls. Snowflakes are falling along with the ashes, resembling nuclear fallout as the place is being destroyed. Significantly, the Year of the Dragon kicks off on February 10th. So the Year of the Dragon, February 10th, the next day is the Super Bowl. And I'm thinking, well, the dragon could be China. So there may be something building with regard to that. I thought that might be an explanation for the three frozen individuals. I'm not quite sure, but freezing, nuclear winter, there seems to be something there. We won't have long to wait anyway, just a couple weeks. Continuing your comments. All right, and look, there's something else too that we keep saying, and it's the number 13 associated with Taylor Swift. Even the mass media has noticed it. She's talked about it. And her connection with Princess Diana, very, very interesting. Okay, here's some more regarding Leave the World Behind. We were often referring to the picture of the American flag that we see in the movie. And it looks like it's quartered, and it's painted in these bright red, like blood, and then green. But this is displayed several times in the movie Leave the World Behind, and I saw some video that was describing this thing, and it turns out it's actually an art piece from like the 70s, and it's called The United States of Attica. And what it does is it says here on the top of it, founded by the American people on September 13th, 1971 at the Attica Prison, New York, where 42 men gave their lives in a historic struggle for freedom. So the number 42 is often correlated with the various race war psyops. Mr. 42, Jackie Robinson's statue, was just stolen. We were just noticing that. But it's a very consistent thing. Rosa Parks was 42. Steve Jackson, George Floyd's twin, was 42. Last guy to interview, Kobe Bryant. They celebrated his 42nd birthday throughout the NBA Mamba Week. As the MLB all wore 42s for Jackie Robinson. They worship these numbers and symbols. And the number 42 is, again, consistently attached to all these various race war psyops. We'll Leave the World Behind is about race war. It's civil war, but yeah, it's race war. It's along those lines because it's about the 1619 versus 1776. Two different views of America's founding. Now, the interesting thing about this piece, the United States of Attica, of course, is that this is very much in line with the general picture of the movie, but it's a map of American violence. And it says, this is a map of American violence. It's incomplete. Please fill in whatever you find lacking. And it's just covered in written examples of the various crimes of America. So my point is, the movie's about America getting some kind of a reckoning. The West getting what it deserves. And in many ways, that song that opens up Leave the World Behind explains it all. The revenge song, Shutting Off the Lights. Let me play this clip. This is Taylor Swift talking about satanic music.
Make music for a purpose. It's not just background music, or it's not just, fluffy, light stuff.
This is not elevator satanic music.
It's ritualistic music. It is music that by even the act of listening to it, you are participating in a satanic ritual.
By listening to, so if I put this on and listen to it, I'm participating. But you're a listener. I'm asking you, how does it make you feel?
It's very stirring. It's very emotionally charged. You can't listen.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Zena LaVey, the daughter of the Church of Satan's founder. And she's describing that you can be influenced by rituals whether or not you're consciously participating in it. That a music concert, it's all spellcraft, and it's just one of the points that we've been reiterating here. And again, I kind of think what she says here holds true.
Make music for a purpose. It's not just background music, or it's not just, fluffy, light stuff.
This is not elevator satanic
It's
music.
ritualistic music. It is
Ritualistic music, fascinating. So the Super Bowl is a ritual. I think it always correlates with Candlemas or Imbolc, and these are the witches' Sabbats. There's 8 of them, and they're the observances of the equinoxes, the solstices, and the halfway points. So there's like these 8 major pagan rituals, and I think they use the excuse of, the bread and circuses as a cover for these things. Tucker Carlson pushing this idea that it's not a friendly migration. This is really big right now, and I use the word xenophobia. I don't. People hate it when I say phobia, but I think there's something to this. I think that there's this tactic of triggering half the population by making them feel insecure, border insecure, insecure even about aliens from above, because now they're demons, insecure about neighbors, so you need your guns, insecure about anything they might want to put in you with a needle. And these are all things that pertain to borders, personal borders, your skin, your home border, your national border, and then, of course, the earth itself. Foreign extraterrestrials are now threatening. I mean, everything here just seems geared at heightening states of insecurity. And I see someone like Tucker Carlson out here playing into this. And I'm just saying that's the weapon, fear. And I see a lot of people saying stuff about military-age men coming across the border. And I'm like, I've already heard this before. When they've recycled these psyops enough times, you should be able to step outside of the cycle and recognize it for what it is, instead of falling for it whenever there's an election year coming. Okay, continuing. I'm not going to play any from that. Here's the old Vice article, Can't Shake It Off, How Taylor Swift Became a Nazi Idol. This article's from 2016. Every demographic chooses a pop icon. Neo-Nazis worship Taylor Swift, a skinny, blonde Pennsylvania girl that they have labeled an Aryan goddess. Nazis and members of the alt-right have been spreading conspiracy theories that she's a covert Nazi, that her songs are red-pilled, getting Americans believing in a conservative agenda. Anyway, it goes on. And this is from a poster on one of these boards. Taylor Swift is a pure Aryan goddess out of classical Greek poetry, Athena Reborn. That's the most important thing. This is Andre Anglin, who writes for the Daily Stormer. Okay, and I think Daily Stormer might have been blamed for Dylan Storm Roof. And all that the storm is coming, we've seen this stuff building up, but they put these memes out there in advance. It goes on to say, Taylor Swift is secretly a Nazi, and she's waiting for the time when Donald Trump makes it safe for her to come out and announce her Aryan agenda to the world. So they were, for the longest time, they were actually treating her as sort of an unofficial mascot. And somewhere along the lines, she went wrong. Let's see what else. There was a little bit of blowback. The association of Miss Swift and Adolf Hitler is harmful and ethnically offensive and humiliating. So there was some blowback, but they did try to appropriate her. And now that she's rejected them, think about it, the army of incels, they have a lot of reason right now to be very upset and triggered. And the Super Bowl is likely where we might see an expression of that. As, we're all going to see how far this goes, but it's looking ominous. Here's a post from Take Our Borders Back. It's a rally. Michael Yon screaming into the microphone that the migrant terrorists are being imported by Jews. Let me play this clip.
Highest. The Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Jewish, right? This is quite interesting because they are actually funding the people. They're going to come to places like Fort Lauderdale, synagogues, and they're going to scream, Allahu Akbar!
So there you have it. More border insecurity. So a few months ago, they'd be all hyping up anti-vax. But now it's all anti-open borders. But I'm saying that these only pertain to half the population. It's part of their two-sided Cywar. Okay, continuing. 737 says, why Tucker refuses to comb his wig. Tucker Carlson is one of these fake populists. And I think he's also somewhat based on the Riddler. And they made this association with the latest Batman movie, where the Riddler is this person in a mask who radicalizes people online to go do stuff. Terrorist acts. They blew up the dam, flooded the polls. Just like in real life, the GOP was like, flood the polls. But Tucker Carlson was blamed for the Buffalo supermarket shooting. The Tops supermarket. The guy was radicalized by white replacement theory, which is one of Tucker's favorite themes on his show. One of their main insecurities, of this replacement. So, interestingly, they're like, Tucker sent the shooter. And then I watched the Batman movie, and the main weapon of the Riddler is the Tucker. Yeah, he's a carpenter, and the carpet Tucker is his weapon. And I thought, Tucker. Okay, continuing. Isabel Ann says, inmate, same birth date as the author of the Turner Diaries. Oh, Attica Prison Rebellion, the Attica Uprising. Massacre took place, Attica, New York, September 9th, 1971. Okay, so that's reference right there, a prison rebellion. No, the author of the Turner Diaries was born on 9/11, 1933. Okay, yeah, Attica Prison Riot. I'll have to look into this, but this is referenced in the movie Leave the World Behind. Okay, looks pretty interesting. I'll look into that later. That movie, though, Leave the World Behind, just full of clues. And I probably should have looked at the soundtrack because they add layers of these things. Nothing about that movie is accidental. Moving on here, just looking at the ramped up rhetoric against immigrants. And look, I don't take a side on this. I'm not open borders. I'm not a George Soros shill. Bill Gates is not my dad, as some have said. There's this mentality that I detect. I get this a lot from like anti-vaxxers. Like, if you're not anti-vax, you are therefore pro-vax and you want to kill everybody. You work for Bill Gates. Oh, you don't believe in climate change? Oh, you therefore are financed by big oil. Oh, why didn't you recycle? Is big oil putting money in your pocket? It's like, no. Just because I don't take your position doesn't mean, therefore, that I take the opposite position or the antagonist position. That's kind of bipolar thinking, which is, kind of typical of how a lot of people consume media these days. And it's by design, obviously. There's nothing healthy about the mental ecosystem of the mainstream or mainstream plus true believer. Now check this out. Taylor Swift's actual amount of airtime during the NFL games will shock critics. And those of you who are into numbers might find this interesting. As it turns out, Swift was shown on the air 7 times for a total of 44 seconds. That's it. But the number 44 is consistently connected with a number of various themes, so I'm just pointing it out. There might be something to it. 44 seconds. And she's going to be there on the Super Bowl, which is the first day of the Year of the Dragon. Also worth probably paying attention to. And then this, the Kansas City Chiefs' upcoming Super Bowl trip is full of Taylor Swift Easter eggs. There's a lot of talk about Taylor Swift, the number 13, but Taylor Swift Easter eggs. We're talking about Taylor Swift being associated with a goddess, Diana, Artemis, lunar goddesses, the number 13, and how the number 13 is consistently showing up in patterns in her life. Every award show she goes to, row 13. We were going through things that she pointed out specifically. So the number 13 is very much encoded into her life. And this ties in to, of course, the lunar goddess stuff. And here again we have Ishtar eggs, another goddess reference. Just pointing it out, very consistent that we always have these goddess references at the time of the Super Bowls. And last year it was pregnant Rihanna. Okay, moving on. Tim Pool says the left wants to suspend the Constitution by starting a civil war.
There's a meme. You know the meme where it's the guy poking the stick at the things? And he's like, come on, do something.
Yeah.
It's Karl Marx wearing a mask with a smiley face, and Karl Marx is crying behind it. And he's poking Texas and Joe Biden. He's like, come on, do a civil war. So here's an article from New Republic. MAGA's ugly new civil war fantasy should be taken seriously. It's funny because on the right, for the most part, everyone's saying like no civil war. And the left is saying, boy, they sure do want a civil war.
Sorry for this boring partisan politics, but both sides are crying for a civil war. They really are. And in fact, Tim Pool has specifically called out for civil war consistently every few months for like the last 10 years. And I often wonder, it's like, here's a guy calling for nonviolence here or accusing the other side, but he's posing there in front of a samurai sword and some kind of large pistol. Not exactly the imagery of a peacenik. All right, moving on. So much to talk about here, though. More talk of border violence being set up. Laura Logan, if you remember her, she's one of these reporters / provocateurs, and she's in Dripping Springs, Texas, just a few days ago. And what she says here at this event is something intended to make the army, I think they call it God's Army, all these armed truckers going down to the border. She's trying to incite something here, or at least create the impression that they've been incited. Let me play this clip.
And if you're really here as a journalist to write dishonest things and mock people for being Christians and imply that they're domestic terrorists because they want a secure border, can you fuck off? Any of you there? Anybody want to leave? This is your chance. Because you motherfuckers have names and addresses.
So she's talking about people in the media. You have names and addresses. Talking to journalists. And this is on the 24th. 4 days later, Justin Moan chopped off the head of his FBI father and made threats by his militia against journalists in particular. So threatening journalists, threatening feds, yeah, very, very hot right now among the MAGA van, and saying that she has her addresses. Very, very interesting development here.
Yeah. And we're tired of it. We're tired of being accused of being racist when we're not, because there isn't a race in this country that doesn't want a secure border. Well,
that's again a partisan myopia. I mean, obviously the left wing is open border, no borders. And look, I've been doing like an examination of this whole thing, and my contention is that the alien invasion agenda is something else altogether. It's like a meta narrative, what I call the multi-layer alien invasion psyop. And it has to do with the idea that we enter a one world when we dissolve the distinctions. In other words, warring nations need to blend into one. Aliens are grays, which would be what? The end result of endless Hegelian dialectics, the black and white, the polarities merged, black and white is gray. No more race, no more gender, no more nations. Just a more advanced version of us, the aliens, technologically advanced, but they've risen above all the earthly, mundane distinctions and differences. So the idea of aliens being evolved is really this progressive utopian view of the perfectibility of man achieved by the right people seizing control of man's institutions. So the alien invasion isn't about getting us to actually believe that aliens from space are coming, but it's about getting every one of us to embrace the alien. Not the alien, space alien, but the foreign, the bizarre, the whatever is completely distinct from where you're from. In other words, to no longer judge. That's what it's really ultimately about. So even without Martians coming down, they can continue to dissolve national identities through immigration and still achieve one world, one nation. And this oneness can all be achieved, long term, I think, through getting people to embrace this as an ideal. And I think they're actually very close to achieving that. And you'll see this pattern. So the left will say, enter our world, we want to believe. Enter our countries, enter our homes, enter our bloodstream. And the right says, keep away space demons, stay on the other side of the wall, stay out or I'll shoot, don't get that needle near me. So you have one side that is totally poised to embrace the alien, and the other side is totally against it. It's a controlled dialectic, but they're trying to get rid of the people who have walls, borders, boundaries. Kind of reminds me of Brave New World, where everybody owns everybody, nobody owns themselves. Mandatory orgies because you don't have the right to refuse because everybody owns you equally. I mean, that's kind of where their future progressive utopianism leads. But that's kind of my take on this alien invasion and the border psyop stuff. What they're really doing here is they're trying to, I guess, it's almost like part of this bigger agenda, this one world religion, part of it medical tyranny, part of it the climate hysteria, flood god. It also involves this, the alien invasion. All right, continuing. All right, moving on. Someone mentioned something about Taylor Swift has a song about an archer, called The Archer. Okay, because yes, Princess Diana is a lunar goddess archetype. That's how she was represented. She crashes into the 13th pole. And, of course, Diana is the Roman version of Artemis, the archer. And we were talking about the symbolism of the archer in particular, because the Artemis mission, which was the more recent one, was delayed several times because of a crack in the shaft of the rocket. And I compared this to the crack in the 13th pillar beneath the bridge where Diana died, quote unquote died. And I'm thinking, wait, the cracked arrow of Artemis. Well, broken arrow is a military term for a nuclear device, a nuclear weapon that's missing, unaccounted for, or disaster. So there's been 32 of those. We're waiting for the 33rd broken arrow, and here we have this Taylor Swift narrative building with these lunar goddess things connected, the Princess Diana thing thrown in there, and then Kansas City Chiefs, of course, with the arrowhead. So there does seem to be a build-up here. And again, the Archer song would simply add to it. Okay, moving on through my notes. We've already covered Matt Walsh, NASA dupe. Okay, here's some more information about the piece. So the United States of Attica. Again, this was the work of art made over the American map depicting various acts of violence. It was created by a man named Faith Ringgold. And it's a 21 by 27 inch piece, Hood Museum of Art. And he created this in 1971 in the wake of the prison rebellion, but instead of marking geographic features, he maps the U.S. through acts of violence committed by the state against the citizens. He uses the red and green quadrants to reference the colors of the Pan-African flag design created by Marcus Garvey, black nationalist. Okay, so this adds a little more to our understanding of Leave the World Behind and the message that the Obamas have encoded into it. I haven't seen many pick up on the meaning of the house that Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke's characters are staying at when the others arrive, who I believe represent Barack and Michelle Obama. And I think what that represents is the White House. And the Obamas moving into the White House. But the movie is just chock full of symbolism, and I said it was ham-fisted because you could just stop at any scene and take something out of it, and it's that deeply encoded. But now there's no denying that this movie is specifically about America getting a reckoning for its basically its real past, and this is the clash, the 1619 versus 1776. And we've seen this played out on the world stage in a number of ways. I would contend that Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd represents 1776 kneeling on 1619. In other words, the idea of the imported slaves as the basis, and then, of course, the beginnings of this country being somewhat effaced by 1776, which is putting pride in the West, Western chauvinism, which is why they had the name Derek Chauvin. Derek is a hangman, or references a hangman from history, and it's part of a gallows. We saw the hangman of Western chauvinism oppressing the poor who can't breathe. And they can't breathe because of the knee of oppression, but also because the capitalists have polluted the atmosphere so much that Gaia can't breathe. And climate change disproportionately affects the poor. And so this all ties in very much neatly with the theme that Obama's Revenge is also encoded into the movie. Again, Joey Badass, the song is called Revenge. And you can see here, and I think this is kind of interesting too, in the scene from Revenge where Joey Badass shuts down the power, he's in front of these power lines, and you can see two of the crosses, and he's between the two of them. And so in a way, this kind of also adds to this Black Christ archetype that I've been talking about, that they've been showing us since Trayvon Martin. I mean, even going back to the beginning of the civil rights, perhaps with Emmett Till, but the martyrdom thing really picked up with Trayvon Martin, where more and more we've been seeing this theme. And I think the theme of the Black Christ thing is also reflected in a lot of these fake rapper deaths we've talked about. The symbolism's been put out there consistently. And here we are looking at this individual standing between two crosses as he goes into a blackout. Very interesting. And again, one more point here is that the Super Bowl 47 Blackout Bowl was quarterbacked on the 49ers side by Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick, interestingly, has the 11/3 birth date, which has a lot to do with the various shutting down of the West predictive programming scenarios, whether it be the nuke or the pandemic, but 11/3, 3/11. But anyway, he was the quarterback. And about 3 years after the Blackout Bowl, he started the kneeling, which was a response to the police brutality. It was a response to the same thing, Western chauvinism and the oppression. So he's kneeling for the same thing that Derek Chauvin represented later by kneeling. But the other significance to it is that he's somewhat a figurehead for BLM, and his name actually kind of derives from a revolutionary name. You have Colin Nicholas, Kaepernick Copernicus. Nicholas Copernicus, who is, of course, the one who started the Copernican Revolution, which is probably the first time that the word revolution was used in a political sense. But you could say that BLM is a revolutionary Marxist movement. So anyway, Blackout Bowl, leave the world behind, this individual between the two crosses, and then he shuts the light out on a song called Revenge. Quite a lot here. Okay, continuing. Michelle Kastner says, the house with the bunker built in the basement is owned by the Thorne family, the family named in The Omen. Okay, so if you haven't seen the movie Leave the World Behind, a few things about it. One, you have references to the Huxleys and the Thorne family, and the character Rose goes into the basement, into the bunker. And I was wondering about what could the meaning of this be. And there's a few different meanings to it, but that character Rose was, according to the author, based on Greta Thunberg. And I called that out based on just watching the movie, because she was the one warning the family, the ship's coming in, it's coming in, no one listened to her. And the ship, the White Lion, was actually an oil tanker. So the oil tanker crashing was obviously a reference to climate change in the West and its dependence on fossil fuels, precipitating its end and all this stuff. It's all built in there. But she's the character who escapes. She's able to behold the end war live. Again, an anagram for leave the world behind. She leaves the world behind. She obeys NASA, as their shirts were saying. And she exits the world. She gets beneath the ground before the nuke hits, and she's able to, survive or something. But going into the bunker is also very much analogous to arcs. The ones who have the arcs, the ones who build the bunkers, like, for example, Zuckerberg, they're going to be the ones to survive the coming flood. And the movie, Leave the World Behind, was divided into various sections, and one of those sections was the flood. I'm like, that's interesting, because she kind of got into an arc, and she was the one heeding the warnings. So the bunker is just another version of the arc. And, of course, the flood is likely just symbolic. It could be a number of things. Okay, let's see what else. Elephant Tusk says, I think Joey Badass was in the TV show Mr. Robot, same director as Leave the World Behind. Oh, very interesting connection. Okay, so he was in it. Yeah, and these connections are very meaningful. The fact that the guy who directed this music video with the shutdown is connected to the 1619 project, they're all obviously mind mapping this stuff out, layering in the symbolism and the music, and telling this complete message that would take multiple viewings, really, to extrapolate it all. Commenter says, Green is a new religion. Carbon Zero, Spanish Inquisition, Green Man is Cernunnos. Celtic horn god, the Cern ritual. Correct. Yes, the green god. If you go recycle at a green recycling bin, you're actually genuflecting. You're actually basically bowing before the altar of Baal, the earth god, the god of death and resurrection. So it's a cycle. Birth, death, resurrection. You look at the recycling bin, it's got that symbol with the 3 arrows going in a cycle. So recycling of souls, essentially. And green, the original green god, Osiris, Cernunnos, the god of the earth. And, lately they've described it as Gaia, which I think is this new god construct, which they're correlating with the upcoming Gaia, the global AI initiative that the WEF is behind. But interestingly, too, the Cern ritual did have a horned god representing, like Baphomet, the horned god, Pan, Baphomet. These are all analogous characters. Cernunnos, the god of the witches, and it represents the life force, the active principle, the male principle. That's why they use the symbol of the obelisk. Harlan Hill says, so do your checks actually say they're from Israel or what? From Satan or Baal? Just curious. I don't know exactly what you're saying, unless you're saying I'm getting paid by Israel, which I don't know if that makes any sense. I mean, I was one of the first persons to come out and say that 10/7 was a total movie psyop hoax. Nobody died. A lot of people fake cried. And if you follow the money, the big war profiteers were the companies that manufacture fake dead kids. We're talking surgical training dummies that bleed and breathe. Like, you'll find no bigger critic. I'm like, yeah, nobody wants those 40 fake dead babies to be real more than Ben Shapiro, so he can grandstand on top of their little corpses and make some political points. Like, no, the whole thing is disgusting left and right. The idea that I work for one of these sides is like, obviously you haven't been listening very long. Or you're just some lowbrow internet Nazi, which is actually very common these days. And it's just sort of like a very low information position to take. Like, anybody who disagrees with me works for Israel. But anyway, I've been accused of worse. And who's paying me? Like, you're also listening to one of the most censored channels on the internet. I mean, how many hundreds of channels we've lost 150 plus YouTube channels. So I'm just saying, if you're accusing us of being like insiders or finance, it's like we don't have the status of being influencers. Influencers. Mind flu. That's they use the word influencer for that reason. They've made these connections between the lexicon of epidemiology and the spreading of ideas. But no, I'm not an influencer. And what's more, I'm considered toxic, I imagine, by most of the people that you probably listen to, or that are even like non-believers aren't welcome on the world stage. I take a very agnostic position. Anyway, Harlan Hill is one of these. I call them CJTs. It's what I call, it's like right-wing woke. So wokeism is the default position for people who see through the mainstream news if they lean left. If they lean right, they go red pill. But wokeism is defined by this view of America that takes into account America's history, 1619 on forward, and its history of any kind of systemic bias, Jim Crow, black oppression, that you just look at these various laws, you're like, okay, you can see where people might have this criticism of America. And the CRT version kind of pins the blame on whiteness, on white people, and you can see that expressed, especially on Amazon. Watch any movie on Amazon, and they're pretty gratuitous in their anti-white rhetoric. I think we're all used to it if you're objective, and I am. So CRT has its critics. However, on the other side of wokeism, on the other side of the political horseshoe, you have people like Harlan Hill, and they are coming from the same position of being victims, but their oppressor is Jew. I call them critical Jew theorists. So critical race theorists blame Whitey, critical Jew theorists blame Jews. Both of them pretend to be oppressed, and both of them have this overarching explanation for who did all the bad things in history. They have their scapegoat that they try to get everybody to rally up against, and if you don't line up with them, you're working for the oppressor. So it's one of these oppressor and oppressed narratives. So Harlan Hill thinks he's oppressed. He thinks he's being replaced and genocided. That's the level of person we're looking at here. Totally propagandized. And you're welcome to call in, if you want. But it's like, let me just ask you this question. If you're one of these critical Jew theorists, why are you hanging out with us? Shouldn't you go find a group of people with white hoods? Shouldn't you be making white babies and moving to Germany? What are you doing in America? What are you doing hanging out with people who value the free flow of information? Shouldn't you be advocating for lowering the age of consent? For taking away the rights of women to vote? Shouldn't you be expressing outrage that women at your gym aren't covering their hair? Shouldn't you be finding a place in Magastan? Like, what are you doing here? Like, you're in the wrong saloon, and I don't know how to help you. He says, bro, you've skirted the Jew issue forever. No, you're drinking some pretty toxic Kool-Aid, and that's fine. You be you. But you want to define yourself by your skin hue, then I don't care what you have to say. Like, you're actually abnegating your existence as an individual. So like, okay, you're in the wrong group. We're too diverse here. And I don't know what anybody here looks like. I just know how people here think. And we're a bunch of thinkers. We're not followers and believers. And if you're still following Hitler, you're no worse than a QAnoner, in my opinion. Tell me, what's the difference between the QAnon fantasy of taking out the deep state and what these neo-Nazis are about? There's no difference. They've all been trusting these plans, which are all just controlled opposition narratives to keep them chasing red herrings for eternity in an alternate reality game nightmare. So anyway, I don't know why they come over here to like call me out. It's like, call me out. By all means, go ahead. Look, I'm anti-Nazi. I think it's just trash. It's a trash belief system. I don't care about your perceived oppression. If you're a neo-Nazi, go find some other neo-Nazis and read Mein Kampf. Move on. Start a commune. Build something. Move to Bertaria. At least he's done something. Owen Benjamin has done something. Like him or not, think he's funny or not, at least he's walking the walk and moving off the grid with his clan. All right, moving on. I don't want to ban people, but there's only two types of people that espouse those philosophies: dupes and federal informants. The federal informants are usually pedos. So that guy's either a pedo or he's a dupe. And do we have use for child predators? No. Do we have use for dupes in here? No. So, in other words, we're from this off-world stage perspective. Like, you can't sit with us. It's not even an option. And you have no place here. All right, moving on. These individuals are predictable. Let me play this clip here, just for comic relief. This is a very disillusioned Q person who found out that Q is just run by a bunch of grifters who are only in it for the money. And I won't torture you for very long, but the story is she's been trusting the plan all this time.
Bad people. They were bad people who did not care about the causes that they joined. They used them for their own profit. How sad is that? When there's people who really, really fucking care. There's people who really sacrifice for the causes. They sacrifice for the causes. For real. It's in their hearts. And these kinds of motherfuckers.
Okay, she's pretty mad. Again, oh wow. I posted a animated GIF of a really tiny violin, and I got 29 likes. But very, very disappointed. All that hopium for nothing. There's nothing behind it. And what we really saw with the Q thing, if you ask me, ultimately was a Ponzi scheme of sorts, where people were investing all of their social capital, thinking that they were going to someday be of use and of value to all the people that laughed at them, that someday they're going to be vindicated, and it never happened. And now they're finding out that these people are just being grifted, and they have no clue. And look, I don't have any sympathy. You know, you join a religious cult, you find out it's not true, you have to own it. I mean, right now, I'm constantly debating with chemtrail believers who are just, you know, beside themselves whenever I tell them. It's like, look, you're just mad at ice crystals in the sky. You know, it's just water. I mean, it's like, you ever wonder what having imaginary problems is like? You know, so you can feign outrage about things that don't exist. Like, imagine getting so mad about something that doesn't exist. Like, I can't really, but the chemtrail people are super mad about something that doesn't exist. And you invest so much into it. It's just like with Q. It's like a Ponzi scheme. You invest, you invest, you invest. You wake people up. Oh, I've woken up 1,000 people. Well, you've woken up that many people, you can't admit that you're wrong because of shame. And I think there's a point where it's the sunken cost fallacy. You see this with gambling. They throw so much money in, it's a loss if they just pull out now. Well, I think people get like that when they invest their emotions into causes and into belief systems. I see it with Mandela effects as well. Look how many Mandela affected people are beyond repair. And you show them the truth, they get mad. It's like, no, look, Chick-fil-A never had a K. The French fry box folds over after the C. And you never bothered to turn it to see where the rest of the word goes. So they misinterpret it as, oh, Chick-fil-A lost the K because reality shifted. And like, no, there's no space-time fold, no reality shift. There's a fold in the French fry box. Very mundane explanations often suffice. But some people just, by default, want to go for the outlandish. The MSM plus. Like, no, there's no way. That was just a regular controlled demolition, dressed up by TV to make it look like a terror attack. No, it's definitely nukes. Nukes took down the towers. Salty Siren says, I'm embarrassed to be human. Oh yeah, I mean, there's just so much cringe out there. Speaking of cringe, Ben Shapiro's still #1 on iTunes for his rap cameo with cringe rapper Tom McDonald. Still #1. There's a few people getting pretty mad about it too, because he's openly espoused the opinion that rap isn't music. And now he's trying to act like he deserves some kind of Grammy for it, when he really just went viral because he's part of this network of people that can make anything go viral. Just because something goes viral doesn't mean it's good or that it's authentic. They have all kinds of ways of gaming these things. Again, Jack Posobiec keeps tweeting the stuff. Happy White History Month. So the far right is reappropriating Taylor Swift. We'll see the blowback tomorrow. Like, it just started, and so I don't think it's close to over yet. All right, let's see what else we've gone. I think we've covered most of what I want to talk about tonight. I haven't followed up yet on any new developments with Justin Moan. Sorry if you don't have any eyewash. I was bored. This is something I did in Photoshop. Marjorie Taylor Swift. Kind of hideous. Oh no, Shapiro wasn't doing MAGA rap. Ben Shapiro did a rap with Tom MacDonald about owning the libs, which is what right-wing rap is basically, owning the libs, saying offensive things and not caring. But then they're also hyper-triggerable, these right-wing types. But he went on a rap with Tom MacDonald, and he said a rap line about his wallet being fat as Lizzo, and he went viral, and now he's the #1 rapper in America in 2024. Okay, Chiefs fan who hosted a watch party where 3 friends froze to death checked into rehab. Okay, so he didn't go to jail, he went to rehab. Again, just kind of a weird story. 3 Kansas City Chiefs fans. And they specifically defined him as such. It wasn't like 3 men from Kansas City died tragically. It's like, no, these are Chiefs fans. Like, what if one had been a 49ers fan? Would they say 2 Kansas City Chiefs fans and a 49ers fan froze to death? What if one of them was a Chiefs fan, one a 49ers fan, and one of them didn't like football? Like, the fact that they defined them as Chiefs fans means it's probably fake and might even be part of a bigger agenda. Again, just a heads up, if you look back to Super Bowl 47, the Blackout Bowl, and you fast forward 11 years and 9 days, you arrive at Super Bowl 58. Probably an indication that something is coming. There was a school shooting in San Diego, well, one that was averted. A doomsday prepper and his kid were going to go shoot up a school with an RPG. Allegedly. Student arrested after guns and explosives found in the home. This looks like an episode from a TV show, but I'll just play it.
North County. So this is just about a mile from the high school on Avenida Savrita. So you can see detectives searching the garage and the inside of the home there. San Diego police tell us this is the home of the student who made a school shooting threat last Friday to several other students here.
Okay, so school shooting averted, or so they say. Just the common theme here, though, preppers. Doomsday preppers. Doomsday preppers in their bunkers. Seeing a lot of this stuff lately. It's like they're getting their scapegoat ready in advance. They have to get their actors out on the stage, get them into everyone's frame of reference, and then they do something. And then again, this probably worth repeating one more time. Trump campaign troll Brendan Dilley urges his fellow MAGA types to, quote, hold their fire and try to court Taylor Swift to MAGA. But the second she makes the wrong choice, quote, it is absolutely incumbent upon us to punish that bee. Again, if any, this is just an indication, I think, of perhaps where the psyop is going with Taylor Swift. Let me play this clip one more time.
Taylor Swift remains, we'll call it a free agent. We will behave a certain way. The second she makes the wrong choice, it is absolutely incumbent upon us to punish that bitch for doing that.
Now, what does that mean to punish her? Again, I think it means stoning, but I don't know what the punishment is. I might play this only to make a brief comment on it, because I've been hearing this threat or this fear. Got a lot of, I consider it to be a propaganda line that comes out every few years. I mean, this is just standard stuff. And I hear these same rumors. Oh, aren't you worried? military-age men are coming. And I don't think this is an organic thing. I think these are rumors that are being paid, or rather that paid actors are put out there to spread. TikTok, YouTube, X. So here's a TikToker, and she's preparing us to be, or she's saying that we need to be prepared, but she's basically saying, I got to break it to you all. These people are coming across the borders. They're all criminals. And she's saying that we need to prepare ourselves. But I'm going to play this because it sounds like a script. And more than that, it sounds like a script written for someone a lot younger. Because she says that she gets her news from her dad and people that are much older than her. And she looks like she's probably in her 40s or 50s. So the idea that she's never watched the news and gets her news from her dad doesn't quite add up. And then if you look at her body language and the way she keeps checking her nails, it's almost like she's playing a role or reading a script that was meant for maybe a younger influencer. But let me play this clip. This is what I call performative xenophobia.
Stuff come across your For You page, because it's coming across mine like crazy, with this shit at the border. And I'm not a big political person. I'm not. I listen to my father, who's been on this earth way longer than I have and been through way more than I have. So I kind of listen to him, and I listen to my husband, because they're older than me and I respect their views.
Okay, so they're older. She listens to them because she's just a woman. So she has these older men in her life and her husband's older too. Okay. And they've been at this longer. So I don't know how much older her husband is, but anyway, she goes on and on about how the people at the border are criminals and that we need to get our bug out bags packed
The right way. But these people are criminals. They are like criminals. And I'm kind of scared, because if this shit goes bad, it's going to go bad fast, and it's going to affect all of us.
Okay. And again, there's no real facts connected to it. She parked out in the middle of the road, obviously did her hair and makeup, got her nails done, really paid attention to the lighting. So this is really, like I said, this is performative.
What I see on TikTok and the news. I try not to watch the news because it sucks. There's never anything good. So, I don't know, guys. Just my thought for Friday. Let me know what you think.
So just her thoughts for Friday. Everybody get ready. Now, there are people who say that I'm underreacting. I'm not alarmed enough, and I'm saying it's the opposite. So here's an article I posted the other day. Living in truth versus living in their lies. If J6 was fake, and we know it was a simulated riot, then why assume that the next thing is going to be real? And some people seem to take the position that we are too lax, we're too calm, that we're letting our guard down. And I see that take a lot. And at this point, I think that they are misled, that they've been given an alternative version of events that's designed to prevent them from being objective by keeping them in a perpetual state of fear. It's like this thing that they're going to take our guns, for example. And one point I have to make here is that it doesn't matter. They're not going to take your guns because they've already taken your minds. Like, the level of control is so much deeper than any of these doomsayers think. Like, I hate to say it, but like, they've already lost the fight. They lost the fight before they were born, if you want to be objective about it. The New World Order isn't coming. You don't have, like, Alex Jones isn't some Paul Revere. The New World Order is coming. The blue helmets are coming. No, it's already here, and they're just expanding its influence and deepening its controls, and nobody's stopping it because the people who think they're stopping it are working for the controlled opposition. I'd have to go. We'll likely begin earlier tomorrow, and I want to reintroduce the morning show, IPS Morning Deprogram, so hopefully I can make that happen starting tomorrow. This is Auto Hoax, or GTFO. Have a great evening. Thanks for all the comments. Archives will go out via email here in about an hour. This is, again, Chief Crow. I'll put the track below.